Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, January 9th, 2023, and in just about a month, President Joe Biden is expected to make a declaration that he is or is not running for President of the United States. Now, personally, I entirely expect Joe Biden to announce that he is going to be running in 2024. As it stands currently, it is very rare for a president to ever decide to vacate the position, and though Joe Biden is the oldest president in United States history, I don't doubt that he is considering and weighing and intending to run for re-election. Now, as Joe Biden has been saying over the past couple of years now, he has made it his intention that he will run for re-election, though he has not formally declared. In fact, his former opponent, President Donald Trump, has already declared that he is running for president under the Republican Party, as he did the past 2 times. Donald Trump's 2024 campaign has received a lot of criticism, one for how early it has gone on, but 2 because he just lost an election. However, there's the flip side of it, that President Joe Biden and Donald Trump are going to be pushing back to 2020 again and going to be in the exact same position they were in 4 years ago from this election, which would be such a very fascinating result, which means Donald Trump, in a way, does have another possibility of winning, considering how close 2020 was before. Now, I will say that looking at Donald Trump's campaign for 2024 president, it does seem to be a bit more right-wing, a little bit more focused around ideology and extremism than his previous campaign did. Maybe that's because he's looking to win a very specific portion of the party that maybe has lost confidence in him, but with outspokenness can be won over. On the flip side for Joe Biden, he hasn't exactly lost the party. In the same way that we see Donald Trump resurfacing, I think a lot of people expected Joe Biden to run for re-election as well. Though the majority of Democrats at one point in time may have preferred that he did not run or that another candidate would take his place, there is still a lot of people that entirely expected Joe Biden to run and actually want him to be the next president of the United States yet again. Looking at the list of Democrats who have already said that they will not be candidates in 2024 sort of tells me that there's a very large amount of them that know internally that Joe Biden is running. If you think about some of these top names, many of them have the opportunity or the name recognition to run for president in 2024. People like Gavin Newsom, Jared Polis, right? Even Joe Manchin could potentially be considering it. Amy Klobuchar, Al Gore, Sherrod Brown, Hillary Clinton, Gretchen Whitmer, Elizabeth Warren, big names, many of which who had ran for president in the past that are deciding against it now. The only main reason why they would probably be not considering it is because it doesn't make sense to run when an incumbent president is likely going to. And based off of our expectation that he makes a decision in February, chances are he's going for it. Usually, a president wouldn't make this announcement super early on if they were deciding against it. And I also will say that Joe Biden would be one of the first on the Democratic side to decide not to run for president after serving just 1 term. Lyndon B. Johnson made that decision back in 1968. However, that was under extenuous circumstances, and the party really didn't want him to resurface as the nominee again. But on Joe Biden's side this time around, there's a good amount of support that they do want him to become president again. This Washington Post opinion column from David Byler summarizes it quite fairly. Joe Biden is gaining ground, but Democrats want someone else in 2024. And I think in an ideal reality, Democrats would want somebody else. They certainly would want someone who wasn't this old. They would want somebody new, someone potentially more progressive, more conservative, more moderate, whatever it might be. There are absolutely Democrats out there that aren't exactly thrilled about the prospect of a Biden re-election bid. And whether that's rooted in something that may be geared around, again, his age or ideology, there is still also a section of the party that wants him to run as well. 47% of respondents, I don't know why my voice just cracked there, according to The Economist and YouGov, 47% of Democrats want Joe Biden to run for president in 2024. Just 27% say no. Looking at that question, before the midterms, around the worst point for the Democrats, as Democrats were starting to dip nationally, Biden's approval rating was getting worse, around the October-November timeframe, when we thought the Democrats were doomed for defeat in the 2022 midterms, 38% of Democrats said no, they don't want Joe Biden to run, 37% said yes, and that number is up 10% today, and that 38% number is down 11% today, 2 months later. The American public, and specifically Democrats, have changed their view on Joe Biden in quite a positive manner. I will also say that with this expectation that he does run, there is going to be a lot more consolidated support. There are people out there that want somebody besides Biden, but realistically, Biden has the nomination secure. Even if some of these very big names decide to run, they're not beating Joe Biden in a primary matchup. Pete Buttigieg is not beating Joe Biden. Kamala Harris is not beating Joe Biden. These Democrats here from Senate seats and representative seats and governors that have either been recently elected or have been elected previously, them deciding to run would not be a substantial challenge for Joe Biden. As the incumbent, he receives a lot of support. And Democrats, quite frankly, would be foolish to try to nominate anybody else against Joe Biden from the political analysis standpoint. Even if it means that they have a more excited party, the amount of people you will make angry, the amount of establishment candidates that will see this as a pushback against their future bids, their own Senate seats, representative seats, whatever it might be, the drawbacks of that are much more severe than the benefits of deciding to challenge someone like Joe Biden in a primary should Joe Biden announce. But as we see here, Joe Biden is gaining ground. His approval rating is at the highest point it has been in literal months, 44%. The last time we reached a number like that, we have to go all the way back to see if we can find it here. The last time it was around here was December 2021. You are talking over a year ago was the last time that Joe Biden's approval rating was this high. 44% of this country approves of Joe Biden. Going into the 2022 midterms around the end of July, just 38% of this country approved of Joe Biden. 57% didn't. It was around negative 20 nationwide. Today, that negative number has reduced down to 8, from 20 to 8, an improvement that cannot be denied. And knowing that Donald Trump is putting himself back onto the runway, putting himself back into this candidate space, Joe Biden has more of an incentive to run. Because Biden has won before. Biden has beaten Trump before and can do it again 100%. Even with where Biden stands in terms of approval, with the American public against him, Biden wins the election. Biden still leads Trump in these head-to-head polls. And given the national popular vote in the 2022 House elections versus the actual results, the popular vote actually doesn't always correlate with electoral count. Joe Biden had a larger margin of victory in terms of percentage in 2020 than Obama did over Romney in 2012, but the electoral count was less for Biden. It's a very similar thing that could happen in 2024 if the general public was more so upset with Biden, but still voted for him where it mattered. The point being, though, that even in a matchup against the former president who almost won the last election, despite Biden being down by 8, reminders, he recovered his approval in 2020 to be approved of by 8. You're talking about a 16-point swing. You were only seeing about maybe a 3 to 4 point swing in terms of this result in the polls versus the actual results versus the polls, even based off the polls in 2020, a 6-point swing nationally versus what should be a 16-point swing based off the change in approval. What I'm trying to tell you here is that though the American public does disapprove of Biden, they still prefer him over Trump. And that is the problem here for Donald Trump and the reason why Joe Biden would re-enter back into the arena. Because given the presidential approval rating, the presidency should not be this close, even on betting markets where people are investing their own money into how they believe the race is going to go. For a while now, this past week, Democrats have been in the lead. But for months on end, going into the 2022 midterms, Republicans have maintained a pretty dominating presence over the Democrats. Republicans had maintained themselves for months on end, and then all of a sudden, the American public, or at least the betting markets, changed in terms of, viewpoint on the election for a variety of reasons, but now it looks like they're more confident in Democrats. And I think, honestly, that has a lot to do around this time frame when Donald Trump made his announcement was when you really started to see Democrats tick up their chances, and then from then it was consistent, and now it's maintaining itself at about even. But with Joe Biden also being viewed as a very likely 2024 Democratic presidential nomination, I would like you to just look at where the betting markets have put the other candidates. Before the midterms, Biden was at 30 cents. And if the midterms went awry and the Democrats were defeated, overwhelmingly, there would be less of a case for Joe Biden to run again and more of a case for another Democrat to enter into the arena. It makes sense, right? But then when the Democrats did very, very well, you found here that all of a sudden the Democrats and Joe Biden started to see a very substantial increase every single day. And today, Joe Biden is at his highest point in over 3 months, likely beyond that, but that's the furthest that we can see. 3 months, if not 6, if not 9, if not a year. People are way more confident that Joe Biden will be running, and I think on our end, we can expect him to announce. If none of these other candidates, the same ones who formed exploratory committees in 2017, in 2018, in early January 2019, and none of them have done that, and it is entirely radio silent, the only person who has formed an exploratory committee is Marianne Williamson, who in the last election was not in the final tally when it came down to delegate count. She did announce pretty early on, and maybe this is an indicator against the point that I've been making, but chances are she's alone in this bid to challenge President Biden and will maintain herself as being alone as we continue over the next few years. The point being, Joe Biden is likely going to run, and he's likely going to win this nomination. The question now for Democrats is how do they shift towards the midterm, towards the presidential election? There have been now articles about Joe Biden now shifting towards the center, changing his point of view on certain policy points to make himself more palatable for the average voter in 2024. And in a way, I would say I slightly agree. But on the same front, I don't. I think Joe Biden has been a more progressive president than most people had expected. But I also will say that he has generally always been this center moderate candidate. That's how he branded himself for quite some time. So I don't think that he has done really much in terms of policy changes to shift to make himself more electable. But I do think that that's always how he has been at heart. I think that's really what we see with Joe Biden. He was never this champion of progressive or leftist politics. And unfortunately, for some wings of the Democratic Party, probably won't be in a re-election bid, which may inspire some to try to organize against him in the nomination process. But ultimately, he offers something that many of these other candidates simply do not in 2024. And that is electability. Joe Biden has won before. He's proven himself in a way that many other Democrats have not. And considering that many of them would likely be challenging an incumbent president with a fractured party going into the general election, chances are you're going to lose. I think Democrats are hoping that it's the case with Republicans in 2024, that all of these Democrats stay out of the race and decide to consolidate and coalesce around Biden, which is very likely. But on the Republican side, that someone like Ron DeSantis or someone more prominent challenges Donald Trump, runs against him, potentially beats him, or fractures the party enough that by the time you reach the general election, they're not as enthusiastic as they were in 2016 or 2020. Donald Trump's only successful election was 2016. Nothing between then and now has proven to be good for Donald Trump. Truly nothing. Donald Trump has lost 2018, 2020, 2022, and considering his heavy influence over the party, he very well could lose 2024. As someone who sees this from the outside of the Republican Party, Donald Trump is very clearly the wrong choice. Very, very clearly the wrong choice. But are Republicans willing to put him up in the eventual chance that maybe he could win the presidency again versus locking it down with someone like Ron DeSantis? I mean, the decision in terms of electability could not be more clear. But the problem is, I think Democratic primary voters like Joe Biden and want him there. Republican primary voters like Donald Trump and want him there. But only one of them has ever won in a matchup against each other. And I truly do not believe that Donald Trump is going to come into 2024 with a mandate larger than 2020. And I do not think he will win. There's a good chance that he could beat Joe Biden if things start to get worse and worse for Biden. But as we now know, his approval rating is on the rise. He is defeating Trump in head-to-head polls, and Donald Trump is getting more and more disapproved of, and people are getting more and more confident that Joe Biden will win re-election in 2024. All bad signs for Trump, but all the more reason why Joe Biden will likely announce in February that he is, in fact, running for re-election. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.